Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Q&Play, my monthly Q&A series where I answer your questions in a rambly, unscripted format. I recently noticed that a lot of questions don't get answered on this show, and I've missed out on some good ones, so I went back to older question community tabs and comment sections to answer some of those. So, first question comes from Dakota Silvertail. What's that one D&D trope that is overused, but you love anyway? Man, I really like this question, and there are a lot of tropes in Dungeons & Dragons that get bad reps that I don't think deserve it. For example, the mystery BBEG, I find a lot of people think, oh, the mystery's overrated, but I think the reveal, if you do it right, can be the highlight of your campaign. I've discussed doing twists and mysteries in the past on Tabletop Tavern Tips, and I will admit, it's really hard to make a compelling mystery. A lot of professional authors can't do it, so expecting DMs to be masters at it is unreasonable, but if you can pull it off, then not only is it really fun for you to write, but it's really fun for your players to experience. That reveal can be the highlight of a campaign. So yeah, the mystery BBEG is probably my favorite trope. If I've gotta go with least favorite, it's dead families. I just am tired of dead families. It is so constant, and I understand the motivation behind doing that. First, it means that players don't need to have awkward roleplay with a family type NPCs, which, yeah, can be kind of awkward and hard to do. And also, dead families are a great way to drive someone to adventuring, and you can have a revenge plot around that, which is great. It can absolutely work. Many of my favorite characters in video games and in books have dead families. However, you don't need to have a dead family. A living family can be just as compelling. Families are really compelling to roleplay. They can be really compelling to roleplay, and I did mention it can be awkward, but if you do it right, it can be the highlight of a campaign. There's nothing like depicting a brother-sister relationship in a D&D game. We're doing it right now in my campaign, and it's working really well. It does help that the players are actual brother and sister, but they don't need a dead family in order to make their characters compelling. The relationship that they have is one of the best in the entire campaign, and it's done really well. So, I don't think dead families are a necessity at all, and I think that the amount of people who do have their characters have dead families is a little bit excessive. So yeah, that's probably my least favorite trope. I've gotten away from the question a bit, so I guess to the next one. Question from William, what is your favorite food? Well, that's easy. Hong Kong style pan-fried noodles. Those are so good. I don't think they're healthy. I really don't. But they are so ridiculously good. I have loved them ever since I was a little kid. I could never finish the whole dish because it was always served in huge samples, but I love that dish, and if I don't finish it, I can always just save it until the next day, and it doesn't taste bad when you heat it back up, so it's great. Love Hong Kong style pan-fried noodles. Even if the name is a bit of a mouthful, they are just so good. If I had to pick like a runner-up, it might be like chicken katsu or pork katsu. Those are also really good. And some sort of nigiri, probably salmon, because I'm basic. Question from Monarch Malarky. Do you have a favorite film, comic, literature, or video game which inspired one of your player characters? Oh man, this is a great question. So just off the bat, right off the top of my head, Crumble from the Dice Goblins campaign was inspired by westerns and also gangster movies. I love The Godfather, I love The Irishman, I love The Sting, I love The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, I love Magnificent Seven, I love Red Dead, and all that kind of culminated with me deciding to make Crumble because those are some of my favorite types of movies besides fantasy, and I thought that creating that sort of character would be perfect for a heist campaign and help him to stand out in the setting. His personality was fun to develop, but because I never played with the other players, I had no idea like what to expect or how to play the character, and often you need to just kind of vibe check that right at the first session. So I decided to have him be somewhat standoffish and hostile just because of his profession and the relationship he's had with a couple of the party members, especially Den of the Drake's character Maldo. But I had him be amiable to everybody else because he was a true neutral character. It's not like he's just going to be a jerk to everybody. That doesn't really make sense for the alignment. So yeah, I will say that I don't take nearly as much inspiration for player characters as I do for NPCs. Often I'll get player character inspiration from really, really random stuff, like random phrases people will say in YouTube videos about hypothetical player characters or character generators that give you the most random options. However, NPCs are the complete opposite. I take inspiration for NPCs all the time. George R. R. Martin's work is a huge inspiration for me. His characters are very, very in-depth. They have so much to them that when you look at a character like Theon Greyjoy or Daenerys Targaryen or Tywin Lannister, there's so much depth there that you can take small elements of their personality, change a little bit there, and you get a whole new character. I did this for the Sovereign in my campaign. She's this incredibly powerful warlord that started off being based on Daenerys, but as time progressed, she became her own character because I slowly tweaked things over the course of the campaign to make her more unique, and my party really did notice that, and they took a shine to the Sovereign because she was an interesting character. Now, she was my most disappointing NPC because I didn't use her a lot, even though my party liked her, and she was interesting, but yeah, that is a story for another time. Inspiration strikes me all the time when I'm listening to D&D shows like Critical Role or Realms Apart, when I am playing video games. It just happens, and I don't think there's anything wrong with basing your NPCs or your player characters off of characters that you see in the media that you consume. I think that's perfectly okay, as long as it's not too blatant, because if it's too blatant, you're doing yourself a bit of a disservice there. I love the creativity of writing my own NPCs. It's a big part of why I love DMing. So if I were to just steal NPCs from movies, from television shows, I do feel like that's taking away a lot of what makes this game great for me. But taking inspiration, I think that is doing yourself a great service because those characters are great. And as long as you change up some things and make them your own, you can have a lot of fun with it. Question from demonslife. Not sure if this has been asked already, but any tips for people wanting to give D&D a try? I get asked this question all the time, whether it's online or in real life, and that completely makes sense to me because D&D can be really, really daunting. I talked about this with B. Dave Walters in the latest episode of Roll for Insight, which was uploaded yesterday. You can check it out in the cards. But this was not an easy question to answer because there is a barrier to entry. What books do you need? Who should be the DM? How do you get a group together? Etc. I do think getting the right group together is the main obstacle for a lot of people. Anyone can learn rules. Anyone can read a book and take notes and learn the rules. Anyone can do that with enough time and effort invested into DMing or to making a character. That is possible. But getting the right group together, that is way, way harder. Yeah, you could go onto Roll20 and shop around LFG, but you have no idea who you're getting into a game. And yeah, it probably isn't going to devolve into a horrible RPG horror story filled with misogyny and abuse and all that. That's probably not going to happen because, frankly, those stories are fairly rare, but you will have incompatible groups that just don't get along. That happens. It's not going to devolve into a horrible horror story like what we read on this channel 9 times out of 10. It might happen, though. You never know. However, that doesn't mean that all groups are just going to work out for you because there are just simply people who are not compatible in playstyle. So I think that the main obstacle is getting a group together. If you have a group of friends who are interested in playing the game, you have successfully overcame the hardest part of getting a group together. Now, of course, there's scheduling, but every group has problems with scheduling no matter who you are. So if you have a group of friends that are interested and who want to play, I think that that is the first major step. Then after that, I do recommend getting the player's handbook if you can get your hands on basic rules. I'm pretty sure they're available online for free at this point. You could probably find them. Get someone to DM. If you want to DM, then take that initiative, get your first session ready, and start going from there. It's just one step at a time. I do recommend using a module first. Lost Mines of Phandelver is absolutely phenomenal for new players and new DMs. However, if you don't want to do that and you want to write your own campaign, I wish you luck, but just know that it will be harder. However, it can be very rewarding for your first time. But yeah, that's my tip for getting started on D&D. That's how I got started, at least. Questions from Albion. What's your favorite genre of music? I know this is really general, but jazz. Love all of it, pretty much. What do you play aside from D&D? Saxophone and a hell of a lot of video games. Any pets? A dog. How did you decide your channel name? Crispy was my nickname, still is, so Crispy's Tavern. There you go. Do you drive? I have to take a 30-minute drive to work every couple days, so yeah, I drive. Okay, next question. Question from Gary from Smith's across the street. How much detail should the GM pay to the minutia of adventuring? Okay, so I have gone on record and said that I love describing locations and NPCs. Those kind of details I think add to the campaign, or at least the campaigns that I run. I love shows like Realms Apart and Critical Role because of the detail. It immerses me into the world. I understand that there are people who think that it muddles down the game, but honestly, 20 seconds of extra detail, it's not killing me. It immerses me into the world and helps me to visualize what's happening in my head because I am a very visual person. So having those details to create an image in my mind, it just makes it all the more helpful. But do you know what does muddle down the campaign, at least for me? Stuff like survival mechanics. People rules lawyering about the amount of food you need to eat, or the amount of stamina your horse has, or the amount of miles you need to walk, or the time that it takes to get to a place. That muddles down the campaign. That is the definition of a slog, at least for me. Are survival mechanics fun, or at least possibly fun? Yes, they can be fun. But if you focus in on them too much, it can really slow down the campaign because I don't think D&D was made for that kind of experience. It'll keep you from doing the things that a lot of campaigns are based around. Dungeon crawling, quests, role-playing. I do make my party buy food. It helps them to spend money. I don't like them just hoarding gold eternally forever, and forcing them to buy food is a good way to get them to pay for stuff and interact with some NPCs in a fun way. And who doesn't like describing their character's favorite meal of the day? That's great. But I do not force them to overthink the rations that they buy or the travel time. I will estimate a travel time and then we go on. Essentially, I don't think DMs need to take an incredibly hard stance or look at the minutia of adventuring. A general look is good, and using it to spice up a campaign a little bit can work, but focusing in on it, that's going to make it a slog. If you guys enjoyed this episode of Q&Play and you want to let me know, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then please do subscribe to Crispy's Tavern. And finally, if you want to leave your own thoughts or questions, go down to the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment "Life finds a way" to reference the gameplay footage running in the background. Sorry, I don't have any horror games on PC. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.